There is a kind of exhaustion that hides beneath the brightest eyes, a kind that can sit in silence for hours and still feel unheard. It walks with calm steps, offers gentle words, listens before it speaks. It meditates. It breathes. It aligns. But deep beneath the surface, something is unraveling. A quiet fracture behind the practice. A collapse so invisible that even those who carry it don't realize it's already begun. This is not burnout of the body. It is the soul whispering that it's been carrying too much light without enough rest. You may feel it, not as a dramatic fall, but as a subtle fade. You wake up with less wonder. You speak truths you no longer feel. You sit with rituals that once lit your chest on fire and now feel like rehearsals. You keep showing up. But the version of you that arrived at this path full of reverence is tired, and no one sees it. Not because you've hidden it, but because spiritual exhaustion wears a mask more beautiful than all others. The mask of progress. This message isn't for those just beginning the journey. This is for the ones who've been walking for years, who've read the sacred texts, fasted in silence, cried beneath full moons, trusted the process, who've grown and yet still feel depleted. Not because they're lost, but because they've gone too far without pausing to return. There is a hidden collapse happening in many who seek the light, and it doesn't look like failure. It looks like fatigue that gets misdiagnosed as not doing enough, so they try harder. They seek more. They push further into discipline, into surrender, into stillness. But still, the fatigue deepens. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are misaligned with the truth no one taught you. The soul cannot expand endlessly without integration. Light must land, and if it doesn't, it piles. The wisdom you accumulate begins to crush you, not because truth is heavy, but because the version of you that receives it hasn't made space to hold it. What no one told you is that the deeper you go, the softer you must become. Not just in speech or tone, but in presence, in rhythm, in pacing. You are not designed to carry it all without collapsing. And yet, you were taught that to be awakened means to be resilient at all costs. That every emotion must be processed, every shadow faced, every day made sacred. But sacredness is not found in constant effort. It is found in alignment. And exhaustion is the soul's final attempt to get your attention. You've probably asked yourself in quiet moments, why do I feel further from myself than before I started? Why do the practices feel hollow? The teachings feel distant. The stillness feel heavy. The answer is not because you've drifted from the path. It's because you've outgrown the way you were walking it. You don't need more devotion. You need recalibration. You don't need more effort. You need recovery. Spiritual exhaustion doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in the moment you can't cry anymore. In the breath that feels forced. In the smile you give during the ceremony while your chest remains untouched. You keep going because that's what seekers do. But this moment, this very message, is asking something more sacred from you. It's asking you to stop, not forever, just long enough to ask the one question that breaks the illusion of progress. What if the collapse I've been afraid of is the invitation I've needed? This is not the end of your journey. It's the turning point. The moment where you stop chasing depth and start receiving it. Where you stop gathering light and start learning how to hold it without burning. You've reached the place where the truth shifts from a teaching into a mirror. And if this is resonating, it means the collapse is already happening. But not to destroy you, to return you. And now that you're here, Thoth will show you exactly what's been draining your spirit and what will begin to restore it. The hidden cause of spiritual exhaustion. What Thoth wants you to see. There is a deception hidden in the heart of many seekers. It's not loud. It doesn't come dressed as arrogance or pride. It comes clothed in reverence, wrapped in devotion, disguised as growth. It's the belief that if you just go deeper, try harder, study more, purify more, surrender more, the fatigue will lift. But it doesn't. It settles. Not like a storm, but like fog. And you begin to forget how it felt to be lit from within. You begin to chase the glow instead of carrying it. And slowly, without realizing it, your path becomes performance. Spiritual exhaustion is not always born from what you lack. It often comes from what you've received before you are ready to hold it. When you absorb truth too quickly, when you bypass integration in favor of progress, when you take in teachings without giving them time to become lived experience, your system becomes bloated with unprocessed light, and light, when it has nowhere to land, turns into pressure. You feel that pressure now, not because you've failed, but because no one told you that wisdom has weight. The seeker is praised for how much they can carry. Books read, lessons memorized, retreats completed, practices perfect. But no one asks how much of that truth was truly integrated. How much became breath? How much transformed action? Most carry the knowledge like armor, protecting them from their own rawness. But Thoth speaks not to the one who knows, but to the one who becomes. And the difference between the two is the cause of your exhaustion. You are tired because you're full. Not of ego, not of distraction, but of too much sacredness left ungrounded. You are filled with insights that were never released through expression, filled with clarity that never reached embodiment, filled with energy that has nowhere left to flow. You do not need more truth. You need to metabolize what you already carry. Otherwise, the teachings become noise, and the rituals become rhythm without resonance. This is what no one warned you about. That truth expands you only if it passes through you. If it sits, it stagnates. The same light that could have set you free becomes the very weight pressing against your nervous system, draining your vitality, clouding your clarity. And so you meditate harder, fast, longer, chant louder, not realizing that every new effort adds more weight to what has not yet moved through you. Thoth reveals that knowledge must pass through the body like breath inhale, integrat exhale. But many inhale endlessly, hoarding sacredness as if more light means more evil. Yet the soul does not evolve through accumulation. It evolves through absorption, through stillness, through digestion. And what cannot be digested becomes debris, no matter how enlightened it appears. You are exhausted because the river inside you has been dammed by your own hunger for ascension. You didn't mean to do it. You were sincere. You wanted to remember, to awaken, to return. But in the hunger to know, you forgot the necessity of space. You forgot that silence is not a lack of effort. It's the moment when truth becomes blood, not just thought. You forgot that the sacred doesn't always move through more. It moves through readiness. So here you are, full of knowledge, starving for nourishment, surrounded by light, but disconnected from fire. You feel the wisdom in your chest, but not in your choices. You hear the truth in your head, but not in your breath. You know too much, but carry too little, and that gap is what's draining you. This is what Thoth wants you to see. Not to shame you, not to correct you, but to relieve you of the weight you mistook for failure. You're not weak. You're saturated. You're not off path. You're overflowing, and the cure is not more. It is less. Less intake. More integration. Less seeking. More settling. Less noise. More stillness. You don't need another answer. You need time to let the last one breathe. You don't need another ritual. You need space for the one that once opened you. You don't need more light. You need a vessel strong enough to carry what's already shining. And if you're still listening, it means you've already reached the point where truth can no longer be collected. It must now be embodied. The exhaustion you feel is not a blockage. It's a threshold. You are not being punished. You are being purified. And the next step is to understand why the deeper you go, the more hollow you can feel. Even while awakening, the seeker's paradox. Why more awakening can leave you feeling less alive. There is a point in the journey where the very thing you thought would bring you to life begins to feel like it, staking the life out of you. You don't talk about it. You don't admit it. But inside, something feels off. You've opened doors others fear to touch. You've surrendered what most people cling to. You've gone further into the silence than you ever imagined possible. And yet, here you are, walking through your days feeling strangely empty, surrounded by truth but numb, awake but disconnected. This is the seeker's paradox. You've expanded your awareness, yet feel smaller inside. You've touched sacredness, yet carry a dullness in your chest. You've left the world of illusions behind, only to find yourself standing in an inner desert, not because awakening failed you, but because awakening without embodiment fragments you. You begin to split between the self you once were, the self you're becoming, and the image you think you're supposed to project to prove you're still evolving. The mind adapts to this quickly. It finds safety in appearances. You meditate, you journal, you speak in calm tones. You recite what you've read, but something is missing. A spark, a pulse, the aliveness you once felt in the beginning, when every insight felt like rebirth. Now, there's a quiet, dull ache in your spirit, the weight of clarity ungrounded. Thoth teaches that awareness is only half the process. Without embodiment, it becomes observation without integration. You see your patterns, your wounds, your projections, but you don't feel through them. You don't live through them. You intellectualize. You analyze. You become wise without becoming whole. And in that split, exhaustion grows, because you cannot remain in between for long. The soul will begin to shut down what the mind tries to bypass. There is a weariness that grows in seekers who've made identity out of evolution. You begin to feel pressure to reflect your journey back to others, to always have an answer, to always appear centered, to always carry the frequency of someone who's transcended what others are still trying to survive. And in doing so, you lose access to the rawness that once kept you human. You become a symbol to others and a stranger to yourself. That is where the hollow begins. Not in the loss of knowledge, but in the absence of self. You know what to say, you know how to act, but you don't know what you feel anymore. You begin asking questions like, why does everything feel flat? Why do I feel distant from my own breakthroughs? Why does awareness feel like detachment instead of connection? Because you are split. Part of you is still climbing. Part of you is still pretending. And the part of you that just wants to stop, to feel again, to soften again, to not need to be anything but real, has been silenced. Not by ego, but by the weight of expectation you've placed on what it means to be awakened. This is not a fall. This is not regression. This is the return, a chance to step out of performance and back into presence, to realize that awakening is not a costume. It is a confrontation. And the more light you hold, the more honest you must become about where you're still hiding. You are allowed to feel empty. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to question the path without losing your place on it. You are allowed to admit that sometimes all the awareness in the world still doesn't soothe the ache in your chest. That honesty is not weakness, it is alignment. Thoth speaks to the one inside you who never needed to impress anyone with peace. The one who didn't come to this path to escape pain, but to hold it more gently. The one who knows that the more you awaken, the less you want to perform. You just want to live, and live fully. With breath, with presence, with simplicity. The paradox begins to dissolve the moment you stop pretending there isn't one. You are not lost. You are in between. You are not broken. You are shedding the image of someone who had to be spiritually perfect to feel spiritually valid. Let that fall away. Because the truth is this: you are not here to awaken endlessly. You are here to become whole. And that wholeness begins the moment you stop carrying more than you were ever meant to hold. You were not meant to carry it all. The curse of accumulated light. There is a silence few speak of. In the spiritual world, the silence that follows illumination. Not the peace-filled stillness people expect, but the heavy, loaded kind. The one that settles on your chest after a breakthrough. The one that builds when you keep uncovering more truth than your body can digest. You think you're doing everything right. You meditate, reflect, release, receive. But somehow, It feels like every revelation is leaving residue instead of freedom. And the deeper you go, the heavier you become. You were not meant to carry it all. You were meant to become a conduit, not a container. But something in your hunger convinced you that the more wisdom you hold, the more powerful you become. The more light you collect, the more awakened you are. And in that pursuit, you started hoarding what was never meant to be stored. You took in lessons without pausing to exhale. You absorbed energy without grounding it. You mistook saturation for and now, your soul is overfed and underintegrated. Accumulated light becomes a curse when it bypasses the nervous system. What should have been sacred becomes suffocating. Not because light is harmful, but because your capacity to carry it has limits. Thoth reveals that spiritual digestion is a forgotten law. Just as the body cannot thrive on consumption without rest, the soul cannot ascend without space. Truth requires breath. Clarity requires stillness, and wisdom requires emptiness in order to land. But no one teaches this. You are praised for how much you can receive, how quickly you can heal, how many layers you can burn through. And slowly, without realizing it, you become addicted to consumption. More books, more activations, more insights, more transmissions. Each one landing in a vessel already full. Each one adding to the pressure in your chest. You tell yourself this is what growth feels like. But what you're feeling isn't expansion, it's congestion. You think you need more, but more is the very thing closing you off. You don't need another activation. You need integration. You don't need another teacher. You need time to become what you've already learned. You don't need more breath work, more shadow work, more soul retrieval. You need rest, stillness, time. Time to let the sacred unwind itself in you without being pushed. The curse of accumulated light is that it deceives you into believing your exhaustion is a sign you're not doing enough. So you double down. You try harder. You force clarity into places that aren't ready to hold it. And the deeper truth, the most healing truth, is this. You're tired not because you're behind, but because you've been absorbing without releasing, carrying what was meant to pass through you, holding what was never yours to keep. Wisdom is alive. It's not here to be caged inside your mind. It wants to move, to express, to become action, to become rhythm in your breath, presence in your gaze, weight in your silence. But when it is trapped, when it is hoarded, when it is measured as proof of your worth, it begins to rot. Not because truth decays, but because the energy around it becomes stagnant. You have been taught to fear stopping. That stillness means regression. That simplicity means lack of depth. That if you're not actively seeking, expanding, opening, purging, you're falling behind. But Thoth reminds you of a higher law. Wisdom multiplies in silence. The less you carry, the more space you create for the sacred to move through you. The less you grip, the more your frequency sharpens. Let go of the need to hold it all. Let go of the belief that your worth is measured by how much truth you can recite. Your strength is not in your collection. It is in your coherence. And coherence is born through spaciousness. You are not here to carry everything. You are here to walk lightly with what truly lives in you. Not to perform truth, but to become it. Not to gather more light, but to live in a body that can hold it without collapsing. The cure begins when you stop grasping and start releasing. When you stop expanding outward and begin sinking inward. And from that stillness, you'll remember what your body has been trying to tell you all along. That exhaustion is not failure. It's feedback. And it's time you listen. The nervous system is the portal, and yours is collapsing silently. The body doesn't lie. Long before the mind admits it, the nervous system reveals it. You say you're fine. You say you're grounded. You say you're expanding. But your hands tremble in stillness. Your breath feels shallow when you're alone. Your heart races before sleep. And your system, once open to receiving light, now flinches at the quiet. You're not broken. You're not weak. But something inside you is collapsing under the weight of spiritual velocity. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because your vessel hasn't been prepared to hold what's coming through it. The nervous system is the overlooked temple of the spiritual path. It is the bridge between insight and embodiment, between clarity and coherence, between awakening and living. Thoth reveals this not as theory, but as law. Energy that bypasses the nervous system doesn't evolve you. It overstimulates you, and overstimulation, when sustained, becomes collapse. What you're feeling is not burnout from the outer world. It's the friction between truth received and truth embodied. Your nervous system is trying to keep up with what your soul has already accessed. You've touched realms of awareness your body is not yet adjusted to. And now the current is too strong, the signal is too loud, and the temple is shaking at its foundation. You are told to open, to allow, to receive more light. But light moves fast, and your system needs time to regulate. Every insight has a frequency. Every truth has a vibration. When you take in too many at once, your biology begins to misfire. The sacred becomes static. What once felt like connection now feels like noise. What once lit you up now leaves you spinning in exhaustion you can't explain. You feel it in subtle ways. You forget how to breathe slowly. You crave silence. But can't sit with Italiano. Your intuition dims. Your body becomes hypersensitive. Your sleep becomes fractured. You try to meditate, but it feels like pressure instead of peace. You push forward anyway, thinking this is part of the process. But the process is not supposed to break your body. This is not a sign that you've gone too far. It's a sign that you haven't slowed down enough. Spiritual maturity is not how far you reach. It's how well you integrate. And integration begins in the nervous system. When it's stable, wisdom can flow. When it's taxed, everything becomes distorted. Your emotions lose clarity. Your insights lose depth. Your presence becomes dull. You are not fatigued because you lack strength. You are fatigued because your internal circuit is flooded. Imagine pouring sacred water into a cracked vessel. It doesn't nourish. It spills. And the more you pour, the more you lose. That's what's happening inside you. You're receiving what you're not yet structured to hold. And this is where most seekers break. They assume they've hit a wall, when in truth, they've reached a threshold. A place where embodiment must take precedence over expansion. Where stillness must become the practice, not their reward. Where the body must be rebuilt to hold what the soul has opened. Thoth speaks now to the seeker who has gone far and wonders why they feel less alive. It's because your nervous system has been treated as a background player in a play driven by spiritual ambition. But this body is not a passenger. It is the altar. And until it is honored as such, nothing will feel stable. No truth will land. No light will stay. You must become gentle again with how you breathe, with how you receive, with how you pause between insights. This gentleness is not regression. It is refinement. It is what allows the teachings to crystallize. It is what allows the frequency to harmonize. It is what allows you to walk through the world with peace instead of pressure. You're not being asked to give up your path. You're being asked to slow down so the path can catch up to your body. So your nervous system can become the sacred portal it was meant to be. Not a tunnel for escape, but a vessel for truth. If you ignore it, your system will shut down in ways that no practice can fix. But if you listen, it will rebuild you stronger than before. Not louder, not brighter, but deeper. And when you begin to honor your body as part of your awakening, not a burden, not a limitation, but a sacred threshold, the exhaustion will shift, not all at once, but steadily. And you'll remember that the soul does not ask for speed. It asks for presence. Spiritual exhaustion is not failure. It's an initiation in disguise. The moment you began to feel tired was not the moment you fell behind. It was the moment the sacred began to change form. Fatigue was not your punishment. It was your signal, not a sign of failure, but a doorway to a deeper threshold. You thought you were breaking? But what if you were being invited into a kind of transformation that only exhaustion can reveal? What if the collapse was coded into the path? Not to stop you, but to initiate you. Spiritual exhaustion is not the end of growth. It is the pause between identities. The space where the version of you who sought so relentlessly can finally rest. Where the mask of the seeker falls away and all that remains is breath, presence, stillness. Nothing more to chase. Nothing more to prove. Just the naked awareness that something inside you has outgrown everything you thought awakening would feel like. You reached this point not because you did something wrong. You reached it because you did everything right. For long enough. You dug, you opened, you surrendered, you ascended. But now, the path has shifted. And what once energized you now empties you. That is not a regression. It is a ritual. An initiation that does not announce itself with symbols or visions, but with a quiet implosion of momentum. When the energy leaves, what remains is truth without story. Thoth speaks to those who think they're failing because they're tired, because they can't push like they used to, because their passion feels like memory. He says this is not weakness. This is the void between paradigms. This is what happens when your inner world has advanced beyond your outer rhythm. When your nervous system can no longer fake alignment for the sake of appearing awakened. When you stop pretending growth is supposed to feel good. Initiation is rarely poetic. It's rarely beautiful. It often arrives wrapped in fatigue, confusion, detachment. It doesn't invite your celebration. It demands your surrender. And that surrender cannot be staged. It must come from a place so real that even your spiritual identity has to dissolve. The one who taught, the one who healed, the one who knew, all of them fade, so the next version of you can be born without imprint. The exhaustion you feel is sacred. It is the sign that your ego can no longer run the show, that your willpower has burned to ash, that your old tools have gone dull, that your rituals feel lifeless. Because you're entering a new room, and nothing from the previous one can come with you. What worked there will weigh you down here, and until you release your grip on what used to open you, you will remain stuck between fire and form. This is why it feels like you read dissolving, because you are. The seeker must die so that the embodiment can rise. The knowledge collector must vanish so the wisdom keeper can emerge. The performer must quiet so the presence can finally take its seat. This is not burnout. This is the shedding of a skin you have long since outgrown. But most never make it past this point. They misread the fatigue as failure. They assume they've lost their way and begin reaching again, seeking again, forcing again. And in doing so, they delay the very integration they were being called to embrace. They run from the quiet that was meant to reveal their rebirth. You are not meant to run anymore. You are meant to listen, to allow the old effort to dissolve. To stop trying to awaken and start allowing the awakening to shape your nervous system into something that no longer depends on effort to feel aligned. Thoth reveals that spiritual exhaustion is not your ending. It's your unlocking. You've crossed the point where surface tools can serve you. You're being asked to shift from expansion to embodiment, from chasing states to stabilizing essence, from becoming to being. There is power waiting for you on the other side of this fatigue, but you cannot force your way into it. You must soften. Let your breath slow. Let your grip loosen. Let your knowledge settle. Let the seeker sleep. And in that stillness, you will not find answers. You will find structure, a new rhythm, a new stability, one that doesn't burn, one that doesn't ache, one that doesn't rely on momentum to feel true. Because this initiation is not about more. It's about depth. And it only begins when you stop pretending you're not tired. You cannot perform alignment, and that's why you're tired. The most exhausting thing in the spiritual journey is not the search for truth. It's the performance of having already found it. You begin with sincerity. You genuinely seek light. You genuinely want to awaken. But slowly, almost invisibly, the quest becomes something else. Not an intimate unfolding, but a silent performance. A role, a posture, a projection of peace you don't fully feel. And without realizing it, You begin to act aligned more than you allow alignment to shape you. You smile when you're depleted. You speak softly when inside you're loud with questions. You recite wisdom you haven't had time to embody. You teach balance while suppressing chaos. And the most dangerous part is that everyone believes you. They see your calm. They see your insight. They see your devotion. But what they don't see is the tension it takes to keep the mask in place. The fatigue of holding an identity that no longer feels rooted in real experience. You're tired not because you're broken, but because you've been pretending wholeness. And Thoth speaks now to the one who has grown silent beneath the weight of spiritual image. The one who knows too much to be numb, but feels too disconnected to be honest. This is the fracture that drains you. When the words you say no longer match the electricity of your being. Alignment cannot be faked. You can memorize every sacred text. You can meditate for hours. You can perform rituals with flawless grace. But if your nervous system is screaming and your breath is shallow and your heart is closed, your spirit knows the truth. And it will show you through fatigue, through apathy, through the slow collapse of inner resonance. You were not meant to curate your peace. You were meant to live it, not polish your stillness for others, but embody it so deeply it vibrates even in solitude. But this takes courage. It takes honesty. It takes the willingness to disappoint the image you've created in order to reconnect with the self you've abandoned. The performance is subtle. You tell yourself you're doing it for others, to inspire, to lead, to uplift, but underneath, you're doing it to avoid the silence that would reveal how far you've drifted from your own center. You're terrified to stop because you've built your value on consistency, on appearance, on momentum. But spiritual alignment is not linear. It spirals, it contracts, it empties. And to stay honest in those contractions is the highest form of power. You don't need to keep up appearances. You need to fall apart with grace, to let the old version of you, the one who held all the answers, the one who kept it together, the one who never missed a practice, dissolve without shame. Because that version was not your truth. It was your attempt at safety. Thoth reminds you, exhaustion is your body's way of rejecting the lie. Every time you force peace, you create resistance. Every time you suppress confusion, you widen the split. Every time you pretend to be clear when you're lost, you reinforce the cage. The cure is not more discipline. It's deeper truth. You can stop. You can let go. You can be the one who pauses to recalibrate. You can be the one who trades posture for presence. You can be the one who dares to say, I don't know. Primera, need rest. I need silence. I need to remember what this all felt like before it became performance. Because alignment is not performance. It is intimacy with your breath, with your thoughts, with your body, with the moment. And when you return to that intimacy, stripped of image, stripped of obligation, you will feel your energy return. Not in a flood, but in a hum. A steady current of realness, of simplicity, of actual connection. Let go of the act. Let go of the need to appear. Let go of the illusion that being tired means being unworthy. Your soul doesn't want your performance. It wants your presence. And the moment you choose that, fully, unapologetically, the exhaustion will begin to dissolve. Not because you fixed something, but because you finally stopped resisting what's true. The cure is not doing more. It's holding less with greater depth. The moment your spirit begins to thin, your instinct is to do more. Another practice, another ritual, another morning routine, another round of breath work, another layer of journaling. You think the exhaustion can be fixed by productivity, dressed as spirituality, but Thoth reveals something else. It is precision. It is restraint. It is the sacred act of holding less, but holding it with reverence so deep that even silence becomes a form of mastery. You've mistaken momentum for alignment. You've confused spiritual busyness with energetic clarity. You keep building temples in your calendar while the altar within you sits untouched. You're not lacking effort. You're drowning in it. And your soul, tired of the noise, is retreating beneath the surface where nothing loud can reach it. There comes a point on the path where the next breakthrough doesn't come from adding more to your plate. It comes from clearing the table, from making room, from letting the sacred enter through spaces you've been too afraid to leave open. This is not a time to chase clarity. It is a time to subtract what numbs your access to it. You are not here to become a spiritual machine. You are here to remember your own pulse, your rhythm, your texture. And right now, that memory is buried beneath an avalanche of over-effort. Too many techniques, too many voices, too many opinions, too much noise. Even when it sounds like wisdom, it can be static when received without discernment. This is the forgotten law of integration. Anything you do not digest becomes weight, and you are heavy, not because you're weak, but because you haven't been given permission to stop swallowing, to stop collecting, to stop trying to transcend when all you need is to descend into yourself again. Your healing doesn't need to be loud. Your alignment doesn't need to be intense. It needs to be coherent, attuned, spacious, and most of all, honest. Not honest in speech, honest in rhythm, in choice, in how much you allow yourself to release what no longer sharpens you. You don't need another answer. You need time with the answers you already hold. You don't need another method. You need to feel what the last method stirred. You don't need another initiation. You need to embody the last one so deeply that your cells remember it in silence. The cure is depth, the kind that cannot be achieved in speed, the kind that only emerges when you begin to trust the power of stillness, when you stop measuring your growth in completed tasks and start measuring it in restored breath, in returned presence, in the ability to sit in a room and feel your soul unclench. Your nervous system doesn't want another rush of energy. It wants still water. Your body doesn't want another blast of intensity. It wants consistency. Your soul doesn't want more light. It wants less distortion. And distortion is what happens when you keep layering wisdom on top of wisdom without letting any of it become flesh. Thoth teaches that the sacred rests inside what you refuse to that the real work is not in the piling, but in the peeling. Not in the addition, but in the distillation. And when you begin to walk that path, a strange peace enters, the kind that doesn't need to be explained or posted or tracked. This peace is the medicine you've been searching for. It arrives when you choose to stop proving, stop curating, stop pushing, and instead begin to witness, to allow, to hold space for the sacred without turning it into content. What if the next version of your life doesn't require more force, but less friction? What if the tiredness you feel is not from what you lack, but from everything you haven't let go of? You are not meant to carry the entire universe in your chest. You are meant to feel the pulse of one truth deeply, and let that truth recalibrate your entire being. Do not seek to expand, seek to refine. Do not seek to accumulate. Say, ik, to embody, and watch how quickly your energy returns when you finally give yourself permission to stop. The law of sacred withdrawal. Why stepping back awakens power? The world will not tell you this, but Thoth does. Retreat is not weakness, it is precision. Withdrawal is not escape, it is conservation. There is a sacred law, older than language, deeper than doctrine. And it states, the force you cannot compress is the force you cannot control. You do not lose your power when you pull away. You gather Italiano, you concentrate it. You protect it from leaking into places no longer worthy of its presence. You've been taught that forward is the only direction of progress, that more visibility equals more purpose, that action means alignment. But there is a moment when your soul outgrows exposure, when your inner world requires insulation, when the noise, even if sacred, becomes an invasion. This is the moment when withdrawal becomes a rite, a discipline, a return to source. Sacred withdrawal is not silence for the sake of silence. It is attention returning to itself. It is the moment your energy, once scattered across timelines, relationships, rituals, projections, and personas, coils inward like breath before exhale. It is not a pause. It is the gathering of something essential that has been leaking for too long. This law is not for those who fear discomfort. It is for those who have touched so much light that they now understand the value of shadow. Those who no longer chase validation because their internal compass has matured beyond applause. Thoth says, only those who can detach from the echo can truly hear their own voice again. The power you seek is not gone. It's spread too thin. You've been offering it to too many altars. Ideas, algorithms, expectations, personas. But power does not thrive in dilution. It thrives in focus. It grows in intimacy. It sharpens in stillness. And sacred withdrawal is how you return to that stillness without guilt. You may fear being forgotten, but Thoth reminds you, what is divine cannot vanish. It can only become more rare. And that rarity is not a flaw. It is a frequency. A refinement, one that cannot exist in overexposure. The universe hides its most powerful forces beneath veils. You must learn to do the same with your own. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from doing too much, but from being too available to energies that do not know how to honor you. You think you need to give more, but what you need is containment. What you need is less output and more remembering. The world will not teach you this, but your nervous system will. This withdrawal is not about deleting everything. It's about becoming sovereign in your energy again, choosing when to speak, when to be seen, when to hover, and when to reserve your presence like sacred fire, not withheld out of fear, but curated with reverence. Every mystic, every initiate, every soul who has ever touched real power has known this. The deeper the calling, the quieter the path. Withdrawal is not hiding. It is alignment with a force too holy to be shouted. When you retreat with intention, life responds differently. Synchronicity returns. Vitality reappears. The fog clears. Because the truth is, clarity does not come when you add more noise. It comes when you subtract distraction with ruthless grace. This is your season of return. Not to the world, to yourself, to the place within that no longer needs to perform, or prove, or produce. The place that only asks to be listened to be nourished, to be seen by the one person you keep abandoning in your attempt to serve others. Yourself. The law of sacred withdrawal is not about absence. It is about presence, condensed, protected, and finally, undistorted. And when you walk in this law, something remarkable happens. Your silence speaks louder than your efforts ever could. Your rest becomes your resonance. Your stillness becomes your signature. And your quiet becomes the doorway to a power no storm can touch. You are not meant to burn. You are meant to carry the flame. There is a lie woven silently through spiritual culture that if you are devoted enough, awakened enough, disciplined enough, you must be willing to burn. Burn for truth. Burn for others. Burn for your calling. But Thoth unmasks this deception now. You were never meant to burn. You were meant to carry the flame, and there is a vast difference between those two paths. To burn is to consume yourself in the name of light. To carry the flame is to tend it without sacrificing your essence. One exhausts, the other sustains. One empties you, the other empowers you. And too many seekers with sincere hearts and sacred longing have mistaken collapse for initiation, have mistaken depletion for devotion, have mistaken self-erasure for service. You were not born to be a martyr of wisdom. You were born to embody it, tu volt with Italiano, to keep its warmth alive through your breath, your choices, your presence. The fire does not ask you to die in its name. It asks you to protect it, and in doing so, to protect yourself. So many burn in silence. They say yes when their soul whispers no. They teach what they haven't had time to live. They heal others while neglecting their own unraveling. And because they have tasted divine light, they assume their exhaustion is holy, that the weight they carry is proof of purpose. But it isn't. It's a sign they've forgotten the rhythm of tending, not torching. Carrying the flame requires patience. It requires the wisdom to pause, to cover the fire when winds rise, to feed it only what it needs, no more, no less. You do not impress the universe by overextending. You align with it by remaining intact, and no light is bright enough to justify the loss of your center. Thoth speaks now to the weary ones, the ones who have given so much that they no longer know what's theirs to keep, the ones who've mistaken spiritual output for inner truth. You are not failing. You are not lost. You are simply standing at the edge of a new understanding that your vitality is not the price of your path. It is the foundation of it. You cannot awaken others from depletion. You cannot teach clarity from chaos. You cannot offer stillness while suppressing storms. The flame must be alive in you first, and that means rest. That means nourishment. That means becoming sacred soil again. Not so something can be harvested from you, but so that you may bloom into fullness for no one's agenda but your own. To carry the flame is to live slow, to move with ceremony, to understand that urgency is often ego wearing a spiritual mask. True wisdom is never in a rush. It arrives in silence, in recovery, in reverence. And if you are too tired to receive it, then now is not the time to speak it. Let this be your moment of remembering. You do not need to ignite yourself to prove your worth. You do not need to offer yourself on the altar of awakening. You need to walk as flame bearer. Soft, steady, sovereign, that warms. The divine does not require your collapse. It requires your coherence. The earth does not need another broken teacher. It needs an embodied one. And your soul does not want you to disappear for the sake of enlightenment. It wants you to return fully, so that light may move through you without distortion. You are not the fire's fuel. You are its keeper. And when you accept that, when you stop glamorizing burnout and begin honoring balance, you will feel the difference. The light will no longer flicker in your chest. It will root. It will stabilize. It will expand from the inside out. And for the first time in a long time, you will not just speak of truth. You will carry it. You are not meant to burn. You are meant to carry the flame. There is a moment in every sacred path where silence becomes the only language that matters, where the noise of teachings, the rhythm of rituals, and even the echo of your own voice fade into something quieter. Not empty, not numb, but still. And it is there, in that silence, that Thoth speaks not through words, but through memory. Not through knowledge, but through frequency. You do not need more instruction. You need remembering, and this is what he now gives you. The exhaustion you carry is not a flaw. It is not a failure. It is not the sign of a broken spirit or an unworthy soul. It is the echo of too much light held without grounding, of too many awakenings, unintegrated, of too many truths received before your nervous system was ready to carry them. And the fatigue you feel now is not asking for more healing. It is asking for release. It is asking you to stop holding what was never meant to be carried alone. You are not sent here to suffer in the name of sacredness. You were sent here to embody it in a way that is sustainable, rooted, alive. You are not a vessel to be emptied until you collapse. You are a keeper of flame, and the flame burns brightest when it is tended, not sacrificed. You have mistaken intensity for depth, discipline for alignment, output for offering. Hell, but Thoth, eternal scribe of hidden law, whispers now what the world has forgotten. You do not become sacred by doing more. You become sacred by remembering what you already are, and then living from that, knowing with reverence, not pressure. Let go of the idea that you must earn your place by effort. Let go of the belief that your exhaustion is noble. Let go of the addiction to transformation. It is not evolution to constantly break. It is not strength to live in recovery. There is a maturity that arrives when you no longer chase breakthrough, but stabilize in embodiment. This is the new rhythm. The one that does not ask you to prove. The one that does not demand your ruin. The one that honors your humanity as much as your light. It is slower, quieter, but in that quiet, it is far more powerful, because it is in that space that your truth becomes dense enough to hold, still enough to integrate, soft enough to soothe. You are not here to dazzle with your awakening. You are here to remember the art of living with truth so steady it no longer needs to speak, so embodied it transforms simply by presence, so rooted it does not burn out. It burns within, in silence, in continuity, in grace. This is the real work. To walk with what is true without needing to shout it, to allow rest to refine you, to give your soul what has long been denied, not more performance, but permission. Permission to retreat, permission to reset, permission to stop carrying more just because you can. Thoth does not seek your exhaustion. He seeks your stability. He seeks your return, not to him, not to doctrines, but to your own pulse. To your own rhythm, to the sacred seat within you that was never lost, only buried beneath the debris of over-effort. The deepest truth does not shatter. It settles. It does not explode. It expands, and when it does, you feel it not as fire, but as flame. Carried, contained, alive, not overwhelming you, but walking beside you like an old friend you had forgotten. Let this be your new vow, not to climb faster, not to awaken harder, but to live softer, truer, slower, with space for your spirit to breathe again, with reverence for the body that has carried you through so much noise, so much seeking, so much striving. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you've mistaken light for force. You are not failing. You are being invited to stop, to release, to remember that you are not here to burn out in the name of awakening. You are here to carry it, steady, sacred, without apology. This is not the end of your path. This is the moment your path becomes yours again. Return to it with less weight, with more rhythm, with the quiet knowing that the truth will always find you, not when you strive, but when you are still enough to hold it. Your flame does not need to be brighter. It only needs to be yours.